Welcome to the Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu. I work with leaders in healthcare, research, STEM, and other technical fields who want to develop an authentic leadership identity and create a healthy, inclusive workplace environment to retain the best people doing the best work. And that means developing the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. Now, this season, we are exploring the first stage of my strategic leadership pathway model, facing uncertainty. And today, we are talking with Rob Fazio about how to use subtle strength and motivational capital to navigate nebulous organizational politics. One of the things I know is that navigating the stress of bad behavior, especially bullies, in the workplace is probably one of the most stressful experiences and the thing that we often get asked to help most with leaders, right? Now, we value evidence-based practical solutions. I don't want you watching this or listening to this passively. I want you to reflect deeply on what we talk about. I want you to take notes, I do, and identify at least one small step to further develop your hard skills muscle. So let me introduce Rob Fazio. He is a leadership advisor and author of the Wall Street Journal best-selling book, Bully Proof, Using Subtle Strength to Influence Alphas and Strengthen Society. It is a good book. He advises elite performers, including surgeons, C-suite executives, lawyers, and wealth managers. His advice on navigating turbulent times and politics has been featured in the New York Times and on CNN, Fox News Channel, MSNBC, and other local networks. He's also the founder and president of a September 11th inspired nonprofit, Hold the Door for Others. And the mission is to empower people to grow through loss and adversity and achieve their dreams. He and I also know each other from being members of the Society of Consulting Psychology. So welcome, Rob. Glad to have you on board here.
Mir, it's great to see you. I'm delighted to have this conversation.
Absolutely. Okay, so tell me, first question, the most obvious on my mind is, why bullying? How did you get interested in bullying? Why did you decide to write an entire book about it?
Yeah. It's funny, as psychologists, people always ask, like, what was your path? How'd you get there? And, we pride ourselves on self-awareness. However, I wasn't as aware until I got through the book and started doing podcasts and media spots on really what my path was. And upon reflection, I realized a lot of it stemmed from my dad being executive in New York City and working for a very dysfunctional, dominant CFO. And at the end of the day, he had a long commute. I could see him very stressed. He'd be quiet. He never complained about it, but my mom, being a nice Sicilian from northern New Jersey, always did complain about it. But as a kid, I saw that. Now, I had a great childhood, but I saw the impact of my dad's boss and work on him over 20 or 25 years. And I kept thinking, it shouldn't be this way, right? There should be a way for people to work and make money and be family people and not have to suffer at work. And I think that was the catalyst for me wanting to work with business people and leaders and even athletes. And then as I started doing the work, not by my design, I developed a niche of working with these strong personalities, helping to turn them around, and also helping people that are on the receiving end to protect themselves and others.
Yeah, you know what? I actually remember my mom going through the same thing. One of her bosses was just awful. She'd come home with these stories and I'd be like, this is the worst,
Yeah.
and it really affects, so you don't even think about this, but it doesn't just affect you alone. It affects your family because the family's upset for you when you're going through this, right?
Absolutely. And that's, I guess that's kind of the little secret here. I mean, a lot of us that do this work, we're really making the world our therapy room, right? So we want to work with the leaders and build our business. But really kind of the side door of all this is we want to create better well-being at home. It's a big cycle. And just like we talk about organizational climate or how a leader walks into a room, how that's contagious, Well, when people leave work, and now it's a little bit different, when they leave their office or kitchen table and shut off the laptop, they're bringing a lot of what they've experienced. And I've just seen so many people suffer physically, psychologically, financially. And that does have an impact on your parenting and being a partner. And quite frankly, it's really sad to see people suffer through that.
Yeah, yeah. And you really don't think about that piece as like a wellness piece that affects your entire life, not just work world, right? So,
Yes.
why is it so challenging for so many people um to be around bullying behavior? Like, why can't we just be like, um, who cares? Whatever.
Yeah.
That's a bully. It's not going to affect me. I'm just going to keep going on with my life. Why is it so challenging for all of us?
I think that there are some people that are just built that way, or leave the situation because they can and are able to. I think the large majority of us, whatever anyone says, really get impacted by dysfunctional bullying behavior. And I think it's so difficult is because it hurts, right? It's an emotional wound. Why would someone treat me that way, especially if I'm working and there should be some sort of a psychological contract at work, right? I treat you well, I do work, therefore you treat me well, you pay me, and all should be good. But unfortunately, not all human beings are wired that way. And I think because another damaging part is historically these types of behaviors, being overly directive or um, getting ahead by putting someone else down because you're the best salesperson or whatever, has been reinforced. And so then people start to feel powerless. The more powerless they feel, the more space they can be filled by a bully. And then it just creates even more and more vicious cycle. And it can become defeating.
Yeah, now that's an interesting um dynamic. If you think about um what could powerlessness lead to, right?
Yeah.
For some of us, um, we feel beaten down and then we don't try as hard, right?
Yes.
And there our performance is affected and our mood is affected, and we might even, ending up having a mental health condition as a result, depression or anxiety or
Yes.
even PTSD, right? This could be traumatizing for some people depending
Sure.
on the severity. For others, um, you know, my guess is there's some people that use that powerlessness to gain power over others, and they might end up becoming the bully. And I'm sort of just curious, like,
Yeah.
is it ever possible that we might be the bullies that we don't want in our own lives?
Absolutely. So there's so much wisdom in what you just said. A couple things come to mind. One, there does become a vicious cycle. So someone who's on the receiving end of being bullied is more likely to demonstrate those behaviors if they go into power. There's something about that where they've seen another person do that, or they go in one of two ways. They'll say they'll never treat someone that way, or they feel that's the way to treat people in order to get ahead. And as they get more positional power, they do more mistreating of others, which creates that cycle. And so that's why it's so important to break that cycle. One of the ways I start off talking about bullying is talking about the Unabomber and how he was a student at Harvard, and there were these psychological tests back then on tormenting and torturing students to see how they'd react. So he became disenfranchised and hated the scholars and hated academia. That's an extreme example, but the same thing happens in the workplace, right? If someone is treated a certain way at a younger age and that's never processed, or they don't have what we call a corrective emotional experience, right? Not many people want to help the bully, and it creates a system where they're isolated, and the only thing they have left to do is continue to behave in that manner.
Yeah. And not to get into politics, but there's a long, long history in the world of some oppressed people becoming oppressors themselves to gain power. And it's a really, really complicated issue in those kind of situations, right?
It is. And let's be honest, we really can't avoid politics as much as it's taboo to talk about and stuff. My view is it doesn't matter what side you're on, you have to be aware of how we're bullied by politicians, right? We know a lot more about neuroscience and how we let ourselves get triggered and then become more biased and double down. That's why we're so divided right now. So I see that happening. Also, politicians aren't going to admit this, but that's how they get ahead, because they shut down conversations, they push us around, and then we fall into kind of an avoid or attack situation, which shuts down dialogues and conversations.
You hit the nail on the head. And it's actually the reason that I ended up deciding to read your book is I just kept thinking about this bullying behavior that I saw in politics and wondered, like, what is this about? And how do we manage now when I feel like I'm seeing more bullying behavior that, more than ever before with people in power? And that's actually what led me to want to read your book, is like some insights. So I'm going to put a pause there.
Okay.
And we're reaching up on a break. So just as a reminder, everybody, you're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest, Rob Fazio. The Hard Skills airs live every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. If you would like to join us online and ask questions right now in real time, please do. We will answer them on air. And you can find us on LinkedIn or YouTube at talkradio.nyc. And we'll be back with our guest in just a moment.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 1 p.m. Eastern on Fridays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
What really drives success in business? Introducing Intangify, the show that explores the intangible assets that create value and growth. I'm Matthew Asbell, your host and an attorney focused on innovation. Join me Fridays at noon Eastern to discover how innovation, culture, and other intangibles shape thriving companies from startups to established businesses. We'll share strategies to unleash your business's true potential. Tune in live on talkradio.nyc Fridays at noon Eastern and Intangify your business today.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and Dr. Rob Fazio. Now, we've been talking about bullying, and we haven't defined it yet. So I figured let's get into, what does bullying look like? How do you know it's happening? How do you know it's different than just like really high confidence, or really driven behavior, or really ambitious behavior? What's the difference?
So it gets a little bit complicated because it is very subjective. So someone can treat you a certain way, and I feel bullied, but you don't. And that's why so much is important around your own ownership and knowing the difference and being able to protect yourself. So let me be clear about something. I don't think that anyone should suffer at work, and I don't think anyone should be bullied. I do think sometimes we use the word bully too sparingly. And then once we use the word bully, it almost gives more power away and we go into more of a victim mindset. So the way I define bullying is it is, or a bully, it's someone who consistently tries to win in situations regardless of the costs or consequences. So they're very self-focused. It's their own agenda, and they really aren't concerned about other people. So a good differentiator, but not the only one, is to think about intention and impact, right? Is this person's intention only for them to win? And is the impact they're having on them that they're demeaning someone or they're hurting someone? There are also a lot of legal definitions around bullying, but I leave that to the politicians and the lawyers and all that. And the other thing to realize is that there are also alphas in this world that are extremely important for business and life and home life. And these are people that will take the lead in situations, whether or not they're the subject matter expert or the identified leader. And that doesn't make them bad people or have poor character. And I think that an alpha that is aware and adaptive, they're gold and they're really important. And we want to create alliances with those type of people. But it's the people that I've seen over the time have either suffered from insecurities or oftentimes they do have a tinge or have narcissism, where it's these patterns of very me focused and they do these things. I will say that in our research, in our work, a large amount of people don't even realizing that they're engaging in bullying behavior. So what I focus on is the actual behavior and not demonizing a person as being a bully. Sometimes it does get to that extreme where there's a character issue. But the reason I say that is, Mira, you and I engage in bullying behavior, but it's a matter of how consistent or intense that is. And if we become aware of it, do we try to stop it or shift? And so in the book, there's a chapter 7, which is called Wait, Am I a Bully? Which is my favorite because people will come to me. The surgeons are classic. Love my surgeons, but they'll be like, "Oh, Rob, I'm so glad you wrote this book. You know, my supervisor, the chief of surgery, definitely needs to read this." I'm like, "Joe, read chapter 7 first before you do that, right? Check yourself, like take a look at yourself." And that's some of the most rewarding work, right? If you catch people in the act of being themselves.
Yeah. Okay, I have a million questions here.
Okay.
First, you mentioned alpha and you separated it out from in how I think about it, there's like good alphas and bad alphas. The bad alphas with the bullying behavior and the good alphas who like you say like become aware of the behavior and then adapt.
Yes.
Is that kind of how you're thinking about it?
Yes. So what I wanted to do is to have somewhat of a roadmap for people, and any good consultant loves their 2x2s, right? So if you think of 2 dimensions, awareness and adaptability. So someone who is unaware and non-adaptive alpha, they are the ones that typically are thought of as bullies because they don't know their consequences. They're not aware. And then moving up to our aware adaptive alphas, they're the ones that are say their best because they know they're take charge of people, and they may intentionally be provocative or something, but they're going to be aware of what they're doing, and they're also going to be aware of their impact on others and also how to make those shifts. So what I try to do is give those 4 quadrants or those 4 types of alphas. So then you can determine which type of what I call strength style or communication style you use to influence.
So now let's take some real specific behaviors.
Okay.
And I started like writing down like the kind of behaviors I feel are bullying.
Yes.
And I actually pulled this out from my own Millennials Guide to Workplace Politics book. So
Awesome.
some of it is being dismissive of other people,
Yeah.
being invalidating,
Yeah.
belittling and insulting,
Yes.
right? What does it look like when you have an aware adaptive alpha who is doing this versus an unaware non-adaptive?
Yeah.
True bully.
So I think the aware adaptive alpha isn't going to do all of those things. And if they do, someone is going to feel comfortable enough to give them a heads up to say, hey, look, this went off. Would you mind having a conversation? They're willing to do the repair. They're willing to look at themselves. They often catch themselves and the next time won't do it. And they'll also make intentional strategic decisions and say, you know what? I'm actually not being dismissive. We'll talk about it, but this person does talk too much. I'll have a side conversation with them and let them know what my intention is and what I'm doing. All that good leadership type of stuff. So they're open to the feedback. They act on the feedback. They're intentional. They communicate about their intentions. If they make a mistake, they admit it and they try to correct it. If someone who is an unaware, non-adaptive alpha, or someone who is engaging in bullying behavior, the first thing is a lot of them are thinking they're helping others through their behavior. So Mira was working too slow, so I just cut her mic and I finished the meeting for her, right? You know what? Mira doesn't speak up enough, so I just go to Sue and I don't call on Mira anymore. Or like, you know, Mira said the same thing 3 times, so when she says that, I don't even address her, right? The ones that are worse, it's when they know what they're doing and they're using their positional power, their personality, or oftentimes even physical presence to intimidate people on a consistent basis. And they're very, very good at being like, well, you know, I guess we call it gaslighting now, but it's like, well, why did you feel intimidated? I wasn't intimidating. I once had an executive yell at me because feedback came and said that he was intimidating, and he banged his hand down on the table and said, I am not intimidating. And I was like, wow, I'm experiencing your feedback, you know? So the difference is there's often a lack of awareness, but they're not willing to do the work, and they're just so self-focused. And they're really difficult people to turn around. Not that it can't be done, but it is not an employee's job to change such a deep-rooted pattern of behavior.
Yeah. So I'm going to now ask the obvious questions.
Yes.
What do you do about those most like intractable bullying behavior folks? Like, what do you do with that?
Yeah. You watch the Hard Skills podcast on Fridays and try to see what the first step, which is oftentimes an unpopular one, is around ownership. Taking a look at yourself, taking a look at what's going on, and asking yourself a tough question, such as, am I in any way contributing to these behaviors or this pattern behavior? And the reason that's a tough question is because we know we don't want to blame the victim. However, we also don't want to create more victims just because of what someone else is doing, because of whatever issues that they have. So that's the first step, is to look ourselves. I think then we need hope, support, and a plan, right? We need to have some hope that we can change this situation. The support is building alliances, having conversations with colleagues that you trust or friends, getting that support, talking it through, getting advice, identifying and building alliances with aware adaptive alphas. The more senior they are, the better they are at mitigating the bullying behaviors. And then having a bully-proof plan, right? Having a plan of what you're going to do, conversations that you're going to have. What I'll also say is some of my favorite work on successful intelligence done by Bob Sternberg, where he looks at practical intelligence. I really like that. So I like to simplify things and summarize as fit, fight, or flight. So if you're in an organization, you're getting bullied. If it works for you and it's not a big deal and you could deal with it, great. It's dysfunctional. But if you could deal with it and you're being successful and it's not harming you, other people, fine. Then it's fight. If you don't like what's going on, you try to change the environment, try to change the person through the alliances and different strategies. And if that doesn't work, you've got a tough decision. And it might be flight, where you have to work for a different boss, go to a different organization. I know that is very difficult, especially for people who are supporting families or themselves, but it's much more difficult to recover from a lifetime in a career of getting bully behavior, because now you're going to become more timid. You're not going to get your point of view out there. And you've got to do something where you can re-engage your best self.
That's a lot of really good advice. So after we come back from the break, I am going to dig in even more into some of these ideas that you shared. So we're going to take a pause there, though, and take a break. As a reminder, you are watching and listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Branco, and our guest, Rob Fazio. The Hard Skills airs live every Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern. If you'd like to join us online and ask questions of us, please do. And we'll be right back with our guest in just a moment.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Branco, and with my guest, Rob Fazio. Okay, so when we left off, you gave us a lot of ideas for how to address bullying behavior. The first is to look within, and the second is to sort of gain alliances, support, gain the hope necessary that things will get better, create a plan and some ideas around that plan. Now, I'm going to go backwards into looking inwards first. The way that you were describing it started me thinking about two ways that I often work with people around looking inward. And one is, are you holding people accountable for their behaviors as a leader, right? Like if you're the leader of a bully, sometimes I have leaders with just super nice personalities. Sounds like, different from some of your experiences maybe, but they're like all the way on the other end of the spectrum, which is just as destructive. They work so hard to get along that they are dismissing really bad behavior, and it's having such a bad influence on the rest of the team because you're not holding people accountable. That's one way to look inward, right? The other is that we don't often realize how much we train other people to behave in certain ways towards us. And sometimes We don't put boundaries. We say everything's okay. We don't say anything about it. No problem. It's okay. We'll figure it out. And that's the message that people get. And they think it's not a problem. So is there any other stuff around like looking inward that you have found when you're working with leaders to think about that they might not realize is perpetuating an issue?
I think the one that is most popular is that this comes from Tony Smith, who is a late colleague of mine. He used to always say, never hint and hope as a leader. And so oftentimes leader would be like, Mira, you're doing great. And it'd be awesome if you just rounded out the edges, right? Okay, great. Hit your numbers. Okay. And that person just got permission to continue to be themselves. So I see that a lot. I also see a lot of the rationalization of the behaviors, right? So I've had countless times, there's an executive team, there's a senior executive who is a great leader and a really kind person. And there's a person or two that is completely dysfunctional, bullying, people leave the team, but the business really likes Susie, and Susie's an all-star, and the business doesn't want to see it, doesn't want to hear it. And the leader isn't willing to influence upward and to take a stand to say, we need to let this person go. It's not appropriate. And we all know this. Then your A players become B to C players, and then it just creates havoc and dysfunction. I see that a lot, and it's unfortunate. So I think the message there is that it's I don't know what the metaphor is, but it's like if you're trying to hide something, let's say you're really stressed out and you've got an eye twitch. It's not a neurological thing, just you got an eye twitch. This goes back to my sports psychology days. I was working with a swimmer, and I was really stressed out about taking the GREs, and I was working there on performance and anxiety. And I said, we all have target organs, and like your stomach, your eyes. She's like, you mean like your eye twitch right now? So immediately into my awareness, where we all have these things that can stress us out, and looking inward is about being aware of when we feel those things. For me, when someone is controlling or bullying, I feel tightness in my throat. To be aware of that and to know, okay, something isn't right here. And I think gone are the days of just being aware or okay. We have to take more action. We have to advocate, but we have to do it in a way that people hear and receive, as opposed to going to this attack or avoid type of approach to communicating.
Yeah, I really like that, because I do think that sometimes we honestly don't know that we're having a negative impact until somebody tells us, and other people are sometimes afraid to just be honest that your behavior is affecting people negatively. Like, it's a hard conversation to have, right? To share that. And at the same time, I totally agree with you 100% that one of the most common experiences that I see, and we think about this often when we work on team development, right? When we think about team development, you have the productivity side, people who are results oriented, and you have the relational side, people who are super, interested in creating a healthy, warm, welcoming environment and cohesive, right? But you need both for high achieving, high performance of a team. You need both. And sometimes we overemphasize one over the other, and none of the overemphasizing is good. When you overemphasize relational stuff, then you don't necessarily hold people accountable, and you let things slide, and you don't get the results that you want to see because you're over supportive in some ways of all kinds of behaviors. When you're overemphasizing the productivity side, the results side, you're underemphasizing how important it is to get along and work with other people. And this side, the productivity side, is where we often see that people say, well, he's such a high performer, she's such a high performer, we can't let it go, like everything else will suffer if we let this one person go. Well, that's not true. Everyone's leaving, they're fleeing, because of the environment that this one person produces. But maybe that person doesn't even know, like they're just like so into the results and so into like speed mode, getting things done, that they're not realizing they're leaving all kinds of dead bodies in their wake,
Yeah. And and those are excellent points. I call it retired in place, right? If you've got a leader or a group of people on a team that are so performance and results driven and alphas and just driving, well, what happens to people that are less so aggressive or don't have that need to always give their point of view? Well, they stop giving their point of view. So now you've got a team that isn't adding value altogether. So in those situations, you try to teach what I call someone who has an elevated performance motive, which can be very functional, is to manage that and use it to pull people in. So we're going to get performance through our people.
What do you do? Tell us more.
Yeah. So so I use this tool called the motivational currency calculator, which gives people three things: recognition of what their motivators are, reading, which is the ability to read cues in others, and then leading, which is how you adapt. And so this is based on David McClelland, who was a Harvard psychologist years ago, all of his research on social motives. And so there's 4 motivators or drivers: performance, people, power, and purpose. And unlike most psychologists, we didn't use boxes or colors. There's no forced choice. You can be a constellation of these motivators, high, medium, or low. The people that we work with often are going to have a very elevated performance motive. And in this assessment, if there's an absence of a people motivator or a purpose motivator, that's dangerous, because this person will just run amok and just think that they're driving and everything they do is good. So we teach them to try to do is to be curious, to leverage other people that have a high performance motive, but also are really good on the relationship side or people side. The biggest thing is to get through them, you have to demonstrate the value of them going through some pain to change the way they've typically already behaved. So oftentimes that comes down to how can they make more money if they ramp down on the performance motive.
Got it. Yeah. So, that does address one question I had about, like, why would a bully want to change their behavior? And one of those reasons is try to figure out what their motivator is. If their motivator is trying to get some specific result, right? Performance result, then like lean into helping them do that, but help them figure out, how to do that in a way that enhances their performance through people, for example, as another, somebody else's motivator.
What's been shocking to me, and it's just as common, is I'll have the perception, let's say I'm working with, I don't know, investment banker, hedge, whatever, a stereotypically alpha type of role. And they're burning through, junior bankers, clients, whatever. And we'll do this assessment, and I'll be like, Sue, I don't get it. Like, your purpose motive is higher than your performance motive, but you come across as this like dictator and authoritarian. Like, why are you doing that? She's like, well, I've got 3 kids. I've got to show up this way so people respect me. And then once they understand that, I need you to show a little bit more of that purpose, right? You don't have to talk about your family, but I need you to demonstrate that you care for others and you care about the organization and you want other people to make money. Just a 10-degree shift. And I think people will give you even more respect and you'll get more out of them.
That's really good. You mentioned, since you mentioned, being a woman in that kind of space,
Yes.
where she's trying to show up in a certain way. And obviously my interest area is women in leadership.
Yes.
Sometimes women are kind of dissuaded from even leaning into, they're judged more harshly for bullying behavior, but also they're dissuaded for even leaning into positive alpha behavior. And I'm sort of curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think that women need to be all in, and we need more women owning their alpha. I wrote an article, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago on the importance of the alpha female. And it's the only article people have written that I wrote over the years. For some reason, it struck a chord, and I got a lot of people asking about it and such. I think what happens is, because we've all coached executives and executive women, and they'll get feedback on get better executive presence. And it's like, well, what does that mean?
Mhm.
Do you want them to argue like the men that are being idiots right now? Is that what you want to see? Right. So women naturally that are alphas are more naturally, from in my view, predisposed to be effective because they counteract the blind side of being a pure alpha with their stronger interpersonal skills that we know from emotional intelligence, such as reading cues in others, being more collaborative, bringing others along. It does not mean that men cannot engage in these behaviors. I just see more women, whether it's social, biological, whatever, are more naturally able to do that. And I think we need to encourage women to do that. And so there's about 5 or so tips I have in the chapter on the importance of alpha women on things like, don't apologize every time that you speak or say something that might be unpopular. Or another one is, don't just take on initiatives that are about gender. Diversify so people don't just see you as a woman advocating for women.
Mm-hmm. Those are really good. And, I really appreciate your, comments on the fact that there is something about women who end up having these, alpha characteristics because of the fact that they've also learned how to navigate usually a lot of adversity, a lot of sort of narrow band of acceptable behavior. And so they're really attuned to people's reactions, and that emotional intelligence comes into play in a way that is kind of unique for women who have gone through that. So, yeah.
Yes, that's absolutely true. The path is more challenging. However, they're better equipped because of that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, we're nearing on another ad break, so we're going to come right back after these ads. And if you have any additional questions, this is your last chance online to add them. Then we'll come back in just a few moments.
What really drives success in business? Introducing Intangify, the show that explores the intangible assets that create value and growth. I'm Matthew Asbell, your host and an attorney focused on innovation. Join me Fridays at noon Eastern to discover how innovation, culture, and other intangibles shape thriving companies, from startups to established businesses. We'll share strategies to unleash your business's true potential. Tune in live on talkradio.nyc Fridays at noon Eastern and Intangify your business today.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest, Dr. Rob Fazio. We've been talking a lot about bullying behavior. The one thing that we haven't touched on that I did read in your book that I find fascinating is this idea of subtle strength. So I would love for you to share a little bit more about this. What is subtle strength?
Yes, that was actually the initial title of the book, but Bully Proof tracked much better. It was a little more fun for people. So we talked about the different types of alphas, which is great on the identification, but then it's kind of That's what you view, but what do you do? And so subtle strength is one of 4 strength styles. And there are a bunch of free quizzes people can take on getbullyproof.com, where you learn what your natural tendencies are around influencing and communicating. So I mentioned the whole idea of attacking or avoiding, which people get pulled into. So there's a continuum of communication styles, or strength styles as I call them, that ranges from submissive all the way to dominant. And submissiveness and dominance is where you get in trouble. And that's where the bully wants you, because they can win in dominance, because that is their ring where they fight. And if you're submissive, great, you just roll over. But the 2 in the middle are subtle and overt. Overt is just very similar to what you think of when we say natural, like assertiveness. Subtle strength is the one that I think has been the most fun to work with. And I define that as intentional influence through using calm confidence that demonstrates both respect and backbone. So when people go to influence someone that is difficult, I think that they forget that that they need to be very strategic, not getting pulled into something, and they have to have backbone. You can't just roll over, but you also have to demonstrate respect, because at the moment that you try to influence a bully or an alpha or something, and they don't think that you respect their ambitions or what they're doing, they're going to shut you down and double down on their bullying. And Mira, I also forgot to mention one other framework. Can I talk about the DEALS framework really quick?
Sure.
That I think is helpful. So there, I use this acronym DEALS, and the whole idea, mindset wise, is to actually try to get on the same page as a bully, because they are so used to getting pushed away and being isolated. And I learned this when I first started working with doctors. You've always got to let them tell their story if you want to get somewhere. Let them go first. Be the bigger person. So DEALS stands for depersonalize, empathize, align, look for the hook, and show subtle strength. Let me focus on the first 3, and then we'll move on from here. The first 3 are the most important because they're the toughest. Depersonalize is the hardest. And I get triggered by this all the time. And sometimes my wife has to remind me, like, read that chapter, because if someone treats you a certain way, like if there's a soccer parent, like yelling at your coaching, the way you're doing, it's like, I'm volunteering here. You can get triggered and take it personally. What you don't realize is that person might have a bad day, or that person might be a little nuts. That's the hardest thing to do. Then the empathize. Empathizing with that person's situation doesn't condone the behavior, but letting them share their story, what's really important to them, is critical. That changes the dynamic. And then aligning or even agreeing with something that bullying is doing really helps you develop a relationship with someone that isn't used to people being patient to build relationships with.
I love that, because it makes me think a little bit about that book, Getting to Yes, where it's all about recognizing that if you take a position and you dig in your heels on your position about what you think is the right way to go,
yes,
it's over. The conversation's over before it started, right? And what you're saying is, just let your position go for just a second.
Yes.
Be open to the fact that whatever this person is going through is what they're going through. It's their thing, not yours.
Yes.
And then try to find a window of opportunity where you can find some connection.
Yes.
And that opens up other opportunities that you hadn't, you wouldn't have allowed yourself to open up because you had previously taken a position, right? Precisely,
because you have this angst towards that person or that bully, and you're not thinking of collaborating. You just want to defeat them, but they're better at fighting. They just are. Like the worst advice is, what do you do when a bully punches you in the face? Punch them. No, they're going to bury you. You've got to figure out how to dodge and weave, or have someone else punch them. Like, no. Yeah.
Yes. Dodge, weave, dance.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Dance, right? Come on. Yeah. Let's dance this way.
Or get out of the rain. One of them. Yeah.
Right. Okay. As we're closing out, I would love to hear a little bit more about your nonprofit as well. And while you share with us, I'm going to also share with those of the folks who are watching now or later on video. I'm going to show your websites, including the Hold the Door website.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out talking about how I got into this business was about my dad and working in New York City. And unfortunately, he was in the Twin Towers on 9/11, and he was last seen holding the door to help people. He didn't make it home, but we found this purpose in his legacy and his kindness of holding the door to help people. So we develop resources where we try to help people grow through loss and adversity. We've got an assessment that help people understand what resources buffer trauma and the negative aspects of trauma and help you actually grow through the experience. And it couldn't be more important than, you know, what our country or all the world is going through right now with the recent terrorist attacks, and, you know, just everyone taking a look at themselves, hugging their loved ones, and realizing that we're all responsible for our own growth. And one of our big philosophies that also works in leadership when it comes to bullying and everything is you've got to do work on yourself before, during, and after crisis and difficult situations. Because if you do that, if it happens again or happens to someone else, you're better prepared, and it lessens the intensity of the impact of the crisis or trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so sorry that you lost your father in this way. And what an amazing way to carry out his legacy to help and support others through this. That's just incredible.
Thank you. We're grateful that we have such a powerful story, and, you know, feel very fortunate about that.
Yeah, yeah. And so what is the one thing out of all of the things that you've been sharing with us today that you want people to take away from today?
I want people to get really passionate about elevating others, even when you're feeling down. So even when you're at your worst, think outside yourself and think, who can I help grow today?
That's wonderful. Yeah. The one thing that I think I took away from today, okay, I took a lot of things because, you know, like everybody knows I write a lot of stuff. However, I think we kept coming back to, and I'm going to say it in my own words.
Sure.
But know where you stop and someone else starts. Okay. Meaning understand yourself well enough to know what you're bringing to a situation and what to do with that intentionally and thoughtfully, and where someone else is perhaps bringing their own baggage, their own stuff, and, you know, what to do with that. And it's not that obvious. It's not that easy. It takes work. And like you said, even through your work through Hold the Door, it's all about, like, you know, before, during, and after, the work that needs to be done.
Yes. And just one more quick thing. I think we travel through space thinking that things are supposed to just happen and be good. And if you don't do the work on yourself, we're going to fall behind, each of us. So that's why, and it's so important to have a good crew of people around you and friends like you.
Yeah. 100%. All right. So if people want to learn more about your work, where can they go?
So the easiest thing is just to go to getbullyproof.com. There'll be all sorts of free resources there, downloadable worksheets. That's the best spot. Or LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well.
Excellent. All right. So there are many things that we've pulled out from today's talk with Rob. More importantly, what is one small change that you can implement this week, our dear audience, on what you learned from Rob? Share it with us on LinkedIn, at Mira Brancu or Rob Fazio, and at talkradio.nyc so we could cheer you on. And yes, we're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, all over the place. But LinkedIn sounds like is where both Rob and I live, so visit us there. We're also, The Hard Skills is now officially on YouTube. On iTunes and Spotify as an official podcast. So if you like this, please subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, share with others to help us increase our visibility, reach, and impact. Okay, next Friday, we are talking with Nori Jaba. This is our season finale next Friday, so please do join us. And she will share with us her experiences about entering the workforce after taking time off to raise her young children, and how she transcended ageism and generational gaps to redefine success for herself. So you're not going to want to miss that. Remember, this is a radio show and podcast. While yes, I'm a clinical psychologist and organizational psychologist, and Rob is a counseling psychologist and organizational psychologist, we are not your coach and your consultant. If you would like leadership and team coaching services, you can check us out. You can check me out at gotowerscope.com and submit a request for us for a free initial consultation. And thank you, Talk Radio NYC, for hosting. I'm Dr. Mira Branco, your host of the Hard Skills, and this was Rob Fazio. Have a great rest of your day wherever you're tuning in from.